Well, I did it. I done did it. I read too many books this month. It happened again, guys. I read a total of 35 books in the month of February. Like last month in January, I literally cannot sit here for 2 or 3 hours and talk about 35 books. I will go crazy, even more crazy than I already am. So I am going to do what I did in my last wrap up. I'm going to show you some images of books that I read. I'm going to give you a star rating. The books that I especially loved, and also the books that were featured in my TBR game for the month of February. I am going to talk about those books on camera, tell you exactly what I thought. But yeah, I can't do that to myself. I can't sit here and tell you what I think about 35 books. My child is getting into Star Wars, so we read a lot of Star Wars books in the month of February, and boy howdy, didn't rate those very high except for one. I rated one very high, and I will actually talk about that one because it was so good. So I am going to just throw up some images of all of the 3-star reads that I did, and then the 4-star reads that I just, again, don't have time, don't have the bandwidth to talk about. So here we go. Let's talk about the 4-star books that I read. I only have 2. The first one is Spy Family, Volume 1. This is a book that I chose for my TBR game for February. And the prompt that I got was read a book by a BIPOC author. So that's why I picked this up, and I am so glad I did. I actually anticipated this being a 5-star read, and I wonder if I gave it 4 stars ultimately just because I had such high expectations for this book, because the premise is incredible. If you don't know, the premise of this book is there is a spy from a fictional country. If you need an idea of what this book is doing, imagine it's the Cold War and East versus West Berlin. That's kind of what's going on here. But the main character has to infiltrate this very prestigious private school, but he needs a child to be able to enter said private school. Not only does he need a child, he also needs a wife, because the likelihood of his child getting in to this private school while he's a single father, it's very low, which, that sucks. I don't like that because I was raised by a single parent. This volume does what it's supposed to do. It sets it up, right? It sets up who this dude is, what his mission is, and he starts putting the pieces in place so that he can, do what he needs to do to complete his mission. I think the reason why I gave this 4 stars is because I assumed that the family would be a full unit by the end of volume 1. I will talk about this book more when I get to my 5-star reads, because spoiler alert, I read more of these and they were all 5-star reads for me. So I'll talk about the family more, what I love about this series, why I think you should pick it up, why maybe you would like it. But I have to say, this is a very strong start to the manga series. I really liked it. Again, I'll talk about this more later in the video, what the series is about, but this is a great beginning. I really recommend that you pick this up. It's very fun. If you want something fun to read, this is it, man. This is what you need. Another prompt that I had for my TBR game was read a horror novel. I actually originally decided to read another book, but swapped it out for this. So this is Ghost Wall. There we go. This is Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. This is obviously a novella. It's very short. I picked this up when I was on vacation during Christmas with my family. This book was honestly the dictionary definition of an impulse buy. I had no thoughts about picking this up. I didn't even know this book existed before I went into this bookshop. And so I picked this up in the horror section. I hope it's clear by what I'm doing so far with my channel that I'm really trying to push myself into new genres, into reading things that I wouldn't normally pick up. Horror is very much that genre for me. I don't read horror novels. I don't read horror. My best friend, that's her jam. She loves reading horror. I am the romance novel person in our friendship. It was great. I obviously really enjoyed it because I gave it 4 stars. The main character of this novel is a girl named Sylvie, and she is the only child of her mom and dad. Her dad is a bus driver and her mom works as a clerk in a shop. So she comes from a working class background, but her dad is obsessed with ancient Britain. Her dad is obsessed with this ritual that ancient Britons would do, where they would throw people into bogs as sacrifices for spirits or the ancient, gods and goddesses that were a part of their religious systems. He is also deeply racist and very sexist. So this book is horrific because there is an element of, violence in this book. There is also a element of just people being in unsafe situations. And that in itself is horrific, right? But not only that, there's also a huge through line of abuse that happens throughout the novel. So what I will say is that if reading books about abuse, especially emotional, physical abuse, triggers you, I would go into this book very carefully, or I'd just skip it overall. There are so many aspects of this book that are horrific, and honestly, the actual violence, which it doesn't take up a large portion of the book. It really doesn't. The thing that's really horrific about this book is the just constant abuse and anxiety and fear that Sylvie, our main character, goes through from her father. And not only her father, but the sexism that she is a victim of from the other men who are in this story. This book is definitely a rebuttal against, obviously, sexism, but it's also a huge rebuttal against Brexit and the racist propaganda that was going on in Britain at the time, saying that Britons needed to go back to the real Britain, right? Which doesn't exist. Like this mythical ancient Britain that people have in their minds, that Sylvie's father has in his mind, it's just not real. And so Sarah Moss really deconstructs that throughout the novel. I was very impressed that she did so much with such a short book. I think that's really one of the things that impressed me the most about reading this. The only negative thing that I have to say about this novella is that the ending is so sudden. It is a very sudden ending. If you don't like that, you might not enjoy this book, or maybe just go into the book knowing that it's going to end really suddenly, because it does. It's very ambiguous. Not a lot of people like ambiguous endings. So if you are going to go into reading this, I would really keep that in mind, that this is a very ambiguous ending. And honestly, the climax of the novel, the real horror, I think honestly what a lot of people would categorize as the real horror part of the novel, it is very vague It's extremely vague. And I don't know why Sarah Moss did that, because she was so vivid about other horrific things that was going on in the novel beforehand. This was a weird book. It was a weird book. The writing was really ethereal and esoteric at times. This book was also really hard to read. I mean, actually read physically, because there are no quotation marks in this book. There are paragraph breaks in this, but honestly, because of the lack of quotation marks, it honestly kind of felt like I was reading a giant run-on sentence, which I normally would hate, but I think it just adds to the ethos of what Sarah Moss is trying to do. I think it really adds to the unsettled way that she wants you to feel as a reader. Anyway, I really enjoyed this book. It was great. If you are kind of dipping your toes into the horror genre and you would like something really unique, not just a standard like Stephen King novel, I would really recommend this. I've never read anything like this before, and I think, again, that's why I love my TBR game so much, because it pushes me to read things that I normally wouldn't pick up. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars, really enjoyed it. Let's get to my 5-star reads, and I really quickly want to get to Spy Volume 2, 3, 4, and 5. These were all 5-star reads for me. They were great. Again, the premise of this manga series is so much fun. The dad in the Spy Family is obviously a spy. The mom is an assassin. The daughter is a telepath. And the dog that they eventually adopt is also, kind of weird in his own way. But I don't want to say what that is, because I feel like that'll give stuff away. The wife's brother also is a prominent character in the series too. There's also stuff going on with him. All of the characters in these books are so fun. It's funny because, especially the assassin mom, she's an assassin. Like, she murders people on the daily, but she's also extremely sweet and kind to her daughter. This is not one of those stories where you're reading books about just awful people who treat the people around them like garbage, and you're very justified in not liking them. It's really difficult not to like these characters, which is crazy because, again, one of them is an assassin. If you love found family, because let me just be very clear, none of these people are actually related to each other. The mom and dad are not actually married. This is just like a fake marriage for appearance's sake. These books are also so heartwarming, which is, again, weird because we're talking about, murder and mayhem. These books are so weird. And it's so hard for me to explain why I love them so much, but they're just so fun. I know I keep saying that over and over again, but they really are. They're so much fun to read. I am so excited to go on to the 6th volume. So I am so excited. I hope I get another prompt really soon that gives me an excuse to keep going with this series. I am a loyal fan. I love Spy Family. It's great. 5 stars. You gotta just give it a try. If it's not your thing, that's cool. We can have a difference of opinion. But guys, this book series is so fun. It's great. I love it. Just give it a shot. The next 5-star read that I read was a nonfiction prompt from my TBR game. And this was A Shot in the Arm by Dawn Brown. The illustrations were very good. They were very impactful, especially when it showed how many people died of smallpox before we got an effective vaccine. If you want to know more about the history of immunization and you just want a place to start, I would highly recommend this book. I would highly recommend this book for adults. I would highly recommend this for children. It's great. It's accessible to everyone. The information in it is really good. I'm really looking forward to actually sharing this book with my child when they get older and they can, read for themselves. I think this would be a great addition to his personal library. It was great. It was, for me, the dictionary definition of an excellent nonfiction book. It was interesting, it was engaging, it was accessible. It hit all of the parameters for me of what I'm looking for when I sit down to read a nonfiction. The next book that I read that I gave 5 stars to, I read because I got a romance prompt, which is my favorite genre of all time. I love it so much. I decided to read Cheer Up, Love and Pom Poms. This is a short graphic novel. It is so sweet. It's also so heartbreaking. If you want to read more books by and about trans people, this is it. You would not expect such a short novel to pack such a huge punch, but it absolutely does. This book explores what it means to be a queer kid, not just a trans kid, but just a queer kid in general, right? It explores what it means to be a good queer or a good trans kid. And I really appreciated that this novel just acknowledged that we put a lot of pressure on queer folks to be a certain way, to act a certain way, to present themselves in a certain way that is not threatening to straight culture. It really gave me vibes of Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. The couple in this, they're so sweet. They're such sweet kids. And so when they got together, I was so excited. I was squealing while I was reading it. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful just because it was a adorable story about 2 girls who are very queer, who are falling in love with each other as teenagers. That in itself is adorable. I am here for that. But the other stuff that was going on in this novel just elevated it to me as a 5-star read. This is a classic. When people in the future ask me, Katie, what queer books can I get into? What are some ways that I can start interacting with queer stories? This is a staple of what I am going to offer people moving forward. It is so approachable. It is so real. It's so amazing. I can't talk anymore about how incredible this book is. You just need to go read it. I don't want to spoil anything. I just want you to treat yourself and go read this book. The next book that I read for my TBR game was actually a mood read reward that I used, and I decided to read Julia's House Goes Home by Ben Hatke. This is one of the books I featured in my 22 books to read in 2022, linked down below. I'm so glad. I'm so glad I put this on my list. I am so glad that I prioritized reading this book. It was such a great conclusion to the trilogy of Julia's House. It was great. This book really dealt with the self-doubt that we feel when we are a leader in our community. This book really dealt with this book really exemplified for me the idea of just do the next right thing. You need to choose to be compassionate. You need to choose to be kind. You need to choose to put the people in your community first, right? And that's exactly what Julia does. She has no idea where she's taking all of the monsters and the creatures that she gives a home to. She doesn't know if they are going to find a home. She just knows that they need to go and they need to find everyone because everyone gets separated. And she just does the next right thing. And I think that's such an empowering message, especially for children, to know that you don't always have to have it figured out. You just have to do the best that you can. And sometimes that's literally all you can do. This book also really promotes the idea that you don't have to always do things on your own. You are fostering this community around you. And the whole point of fostering a community around you is so that when you need help, there are people there to help you when you need them to. And it's okay to admit that you need help. It's okay to admit that you don't have everything figured out, even if you're a leader in your community. This is a great way to end the series. I loved it. It was so good. I really recommend this series. Even if you're an adult and you don't have a kid to read this to, this is such a sweet, poignant story for our world right now. The next book that I read in February was for my other nonfiction prompt for my TBR game. And I read Ready to Fly by Lion and LaFay. This book was great. The artwork was beautiful. The artist was so talented. And this book also didn't shy away from the racism that Sylvia Townsend went through. All Sylvia Townsend wanted to be growing up was a ballerina. However, she wasn't allowed to join any ballet schools because she was Black. And so she relied on the librarian from her book, the bookmobile that came through her neighborhood. And she read books about ballet that taught her how to be a ballerina. And she shared that information with the other kids in her neighborhood. She led classes, informal classes. Her efforts eventually got recognized by the head of a ballet school. They let her try out and she got in, and she grew up and became a ballerina. She got her wish. And not only did she become a ballerina, she opened her own ballet school for all little girls to join, regardless of the color of their skin. This book was so sweet. It was so empowering. I cried, just like I always cry when I read books to my child, apparently. And it was great. This story was so incredibly inspiring. I am so glad that I learned about Sylvia Townsend. I literally had no idea who she was before I read this book. I am so impressed by the caliber of picture book biographies that I've read over the past couple months. It was great. I don't know what else to say. This book was 5 stars. It was beautiful. It was inspiring. I can't recommend it enough. The last book that I read for my TBR game was The Guest List. Now, listen, this is the first 5 stars that I've given to a mystery thriller. It was really good, guys. I really recommend this. And maybe I just don't know enough. Like, maybe I've only read 3 mystery thrillers. So what do I know? Maybe this is a 5-star read for me right now. And then maybe I'll read a couple dozen mystery thrillers and this will become a 4-star or 3-star read for me. I don't know, but I can just tell you right now, for me, right now, this is a 5-star read. The way that I would pitch this book now that I've read it is, imagine Gwyneth Paltrow got married on a isolated island off the coast of Ireland and invited all of her swanky friends and then promoted it on Goop. That's kind of what this is. The groom is the star of a reality TV show. This book happens from multiple point of views, which was great. I really think that's one of the strengths of this book. If the book had just been from one person's perspective, this book would not have been even close to being as good as it was. That was a great call on the author's part. The writing was also really evocative. I felt like I was on an Irish island. I really don't think anyone in this book is likable. I can think of one person that is likable in this book. And even that person, there were moments where I was like, no, I don't like that. So if you are going into this book, like wanting to root for a bunch of people to, like, you know, get saved from the serial killer, like, that's not what this book is. That's not what this book is at all. This is a group of really deeply flawed people who are all trapped on an island together for a wedding. That's what this is. And then someone gets murdered at the end. Like, that's what this book is. I really liked the twist. That's what put it up as a 5-star read for me, to be honest. Another book that I want to highlight in my wrap up is Heartstopper Volume 4 by Alice Oseman. This book was tough to read, guys. Not because it wasn't great. It obviously was. I gave it 5 stars. But this book deals with eating disorders. This book deals with really serious mental health issues. This book deals with self-harm. This book deals with homophobic family members who, you know, make you feel like you don't matter as a queer person. Yeah, this is a rough read. And honestly, I kind of put it off as much as I could because I knew from the ending of Volume 3 that this was going to be a hard book to read. This was not going to be, you know, a fun, like, little romp. But I just love this series so much. I cannot wait for the 5th one to come out. I am so excited to see where the story goes. This book was also featured in my 22 books to read in 2022 video. And last but not least is a Star Wars book. Specifically, Are You Scared, Darth Vader by Adam Rex. This is a picture book that I read with my child. I read this with my child 5 times over the course of the month of February because not only did I love it, my child loved it so much. I don't think this is gonna be a 5-star read for everyone, but I would be shocked, honestly, if someone hates this book because it is so funny. This book seriously has This Is Not My Hat energy. It is so funny. The illustrations, the dialogue between the author and Darth Vader, because this is a very meta book, just so you know. This also gives me really big We Are Not in a Book vibes by Mo Willems. The author of the book keeps asking Darth Vader if he's afraid of certain things, and Darth Vader keeps saying, no, of course not. I can't do the Darth Vader voice. It's fine. This book was so great. This was such a hit in my house that we actually FaceTimed my child's grandfather and read him the book because my child was so excited to share this book with another person that we literally had to FaceTime Grandpa so that we could read it to him. All right, guys, that's what I read. That's what I read in the month of February. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts. What was your Are You Afraid, Darth Vader for the month of February? Anyway, be kind to yourself, be kind to other people, and please have a great rest of your day. Bye.